I swear the idea of making a 3D Vampire Survivors had crossed my mind too. I remembered that thought the first time I saw Megabonk. Yeah, I had definitely thought of this game before. And they have made it exactly how I imagined it. And it's amazing. For the last 2 weeks, I haven't been able to put it down. The core gameplay loop is so satisfying. Constantly trying a new build, diving into hordes of enemies, navigating through the chaos, it's just an incredible amount of fun. Everything in the game is just as I had thought. But how? Is it possible that this game had crossed my mind before it was made? Actually, now that I think about it, I felt the same thing when I first played Vampire Survivors. I remember telling myself, I have thought of this game before. So, could this be possible? Have you ever felt this? When you see a game, a movie, or an idea, have you ever said to yourself, I have thought of this too? Actually, this feeling has a name, Déjà Pensé. It means already thought in French. It's the feeling that something you are seeing has already passed through your mind before. The brain creates this sense of familiarity when it recognizes certain thought patterns, and sometimes this feeling is so strong that you say, I swear I already thought of this. But here's the interesting part. Maybe you really did think of it, because there are many examples of this in history. Events where the same ideas were developed by completely independent people in the same era. In science, this is called multiple discovery or simultaneous invention. For example, we know that Alexander Graham Bell invented the telephone, right? But actually, an inventor named Elisha Gray had also invented the telephone at the same time. It's even said they went to the patent office on the same day, just 3 hours apart. And this is just one example. An article written in 1922 named Are Inventions Inevitable listed 148 major inventions in history that were made by at least 2 different people, independently of each other. There are even inventions like the telegraph that were discovered by 5 different people in the same period. So this is a recurring theme in human history. The same thoughts can sprout in different minds in the same era. So, it's possible that I had thought of Megabonk or Vampire Survivors before they were made, right? Well, yes, it's possible, but not probable. Actually, the idea of a 3D Vampire Survivors had crossed my mind before seeing Megabonk, yes, but this idea could occur to anyone. It's not a concept that's too far-fetched to imagine. What made me say they made Megabonk exactly how I imagined it is actually the Zeitgeist. In English, the spirit of the time. Zeitgeist is a concept that describes the dominant way of thinking in a period, its cultural trends, artistic sensibilities, ideals, and general atmosphere. In short, it expresses how the people of a certain era think, what they believe in, and what they find important. Because we are not as independent from each other as we think. We live in the same cultural universe. We watch the same movies, we play the same games, we breathe the same internet. And at some point, naturally, similar sources of inspiration lead us to similar ideas. For example, James Cameron, who wrote and directed The Terminator, says he wrote the script after being influenced by a nightmare he had. However, a writer named Harlan Ellison claimed that the idea was stolen from him, that it was identical to a story he had written for the TV show The Outer Limits, which aired in 1964. In this episode of the show, a soldier really does come from a very bleak future. A psychologist questions this soldier and believes he's a time traveler. At that moment, another soldier comes from the future, and the 2 soldiers fight. In the end, the first soldier kills the other and saves everyone in that time period. This really does resemble the story of the Terminator. I don't know if James Cameron was really inspired by this story, but as long as there's a shared consumption of culture, people will inspire each other. This happens very often in gaming world too. After Vampire Survivors came out, hundreds of its clones were released. Some were just imitations, but others took the original idea and turned it into something new. Megabonk is one of them. It takes the classic formula, but adds a dimension, changes the feeling, transforms the energy into something else. And in doing so, it uses the shared cultural pool of the era. Therefore, it feels very familiar. I'm sure many people who played Megabonk encountered something that felt very familiar to them. The game's visual design, color palette, choice of weapons, choice of enemies, sound design, all of it might have felt familiar to people in some way. This is largely what happened to me. I can say the same for Vampire Survivors. When I first played Vampire Survivors, what made me say I feel like I have seen this game before was exactly this phenomenon. Otherwise, neither game had occurred to me before. Of course, after playing Vampire Survivors, the possibility of a 3D version had crossed my mind, but that was it. I had no active thoughts about it. Until someone made it. When someone achieved that, I felt as if I had thought of it before too, but actually, they just felt familiar to me. That's all. This feeling arose because I likened the gameplay, graphics, color palettes, and music to games I had seen before. They felt so familiar to me that I almost believed I had thought of the same concept before. But most likely, it's simply because the developer and I have been shaped by the same cultural influences, that's all. And here's the beautiful part. This isn't a problem. On the contrary, it's the natural evolution of creativity. Every work is inspired by the one before it. Megabonk exists thanks to Vampire Survivors, but Vampire Survivors was also inspired by a game from 2015 called Magic Survival. And I'm sure the creators of Magic Survival were inspired by another game. This chain goes on forever. Just like in music, in cinema, even in science, no idea is born in a vacuum. Everyone takes someone else's spark and carries it a little further. And actually, this is creativity in its purest form. Maybe that's why Megabonk felt so familiar to me, because it's not just a game, it's the product of a collective consciousness, of a shared imagination. And maybe that's why saying I thought of this too isn't unfair. Because at some point we can all think of similar things in different places at different times, but we can share the same dream. That's what inspiration is. One idea sparking another, like links in a chain. Magic Survival inspired Vampire Survivors. Vampire Survivors inspired Megabonk, and tomorrow Megabonk will inspire another game, and this cycle will continue. When you're playing Megabonk or see another new game coming out and the thought I have thought of this too comes to mind, don't feel bad. On the contrary, be proud, because it shows that you are also in that great universal river of creativity, that you've captured the Zeitgeist, the spirit of the time. Every person can be inspired by other works. What's important is to breathe your own soul into that inspiration. Thank you for watching.